He said the ratings came in. And I said, oh, I do okay, I guess. And he said, come down here. So I got up and I got dressed and drove to the radio station and saw the rating book. And I saw why he wanted to move me to an evening shift and why he also wanted me to see it.
And that is the voice of Emmy Award-winning writer, author, and director, as well as radio personality Ken Levine. Last time he told us that there were a bunch of people that he went to UCLA with and was part of the radio program there who became famous later on. Now, Ken, tell us about who those people were and are.
Billy Pearl was on the station. He was my roommate. Steve Weed, who had a long career both as a disc jockey at places like KSEA-FM and 99X in New York, and then program director for many stations. Campus radio station, KLA, had a number of people who went on to be TV anchors. Marky Maisel and Lynn Joyner. They all became TV news anchors. Other people became program directors and station owners. So it was a great time to be at UCLA. The guy who did my news on the weekends was Zev Yaroslavsky, who went on to become a city councilman in LA.
That's right. And then later County Board of Supervisors.
Right.
And his daughter-in-law, I think, is an LA City Council person now.
I think so. Yeah. Yeah. And he was my newsman.
Wow.
Back in those days. We had a guy, Joe Terry, Larry Boxer was his real name, and he became a disc jockey on KGFJ. Barry Sahlberg was on the station, and he became a disc jockey at Kriz and Croy and Kissin. So we had a lot of guys that went on to have actual radio careers back in those days. And I got my first job doing weekends at KERN in Bakersfield. This was when I was still going to UCLA. And I would drive my 1966 Ford Mustang up over the Grapevine every weekend. I would work Saturday 6 to midnight and Sunday noon to 6 for minimum wage, $2.50. And of course, gasoline was 20 cents a gallon back then. But I couldn't afford a hotel, so I would sleep on the program director's couch on Saturday night. But that was my first on-air radio gig from the summer of 71 to the summer of 72.
And that was a top 40 format as well.
Yeah, very much top 40.
And were you going by Ken Levine then as well? Or
no, they didn't want me to go by Ken Levine. They thought it was too Jewish. And they wanted me to go by R.K. Olson, and no, I don't want to do that. So I became Ken Stevens, which was kind of generic.
Yeah.
But truckin' was the big thing. So I was like Truck Ken Stevens. Make it a little distinctive.
Yeah.
And I was there, like I said, for a year, and I got a job as a board op engineer for KABC KLOS, and that paid, really good NABIT union money. So I did that for a while, but I wanted to get back into radio, and I got a job doing all nights at KMen in San Bernardino. Ironically, the jock I replaced was named Joe Angel, and Joe Angel then became a baseball announcer. And when I got my first big league job with the Baltimore Orioles, the announcer I replaced was Joe Angel.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah.
Wow. And
so,
KMen...
so I was doing all nights at KMen for like $650 a month.
Oh, goodness. The home of the KMen Entertainers. I know Mark Dennis was on there back in the 1960s, along with...
Yeah, they had their heyday in the 1960s. By the time I was there, they were pretty terrible We were the rock of the Inland Empire. Our program director was enamored by WLS in Chicago. And that's when they had those horrible Rock of Chicago jingles in the early 70s. So we got those jingles, and we were the rock of the Inland Empire,
Mm.
which sounded ridiculous. But no, uh, well, we were a distant number two to KFXM. KFXM also had a better signal at 590. And I was doing all nights and it was killing me. And I wanted to get off the all night shift and finally do an evening shift. And they go like, no. And the program director would just say to me, stop trying to be funny. Just shut up. Just play the songs. Just play the hits. Uh, and so we had a rating period in April, May, and the only hour that I was rated was 5 to 6 a.m. because they didn't rate from midnight to 5. Um, and so I get off the air and I go back to my apartment and try to get some sleep. And the book comes out in the morning, and I get a call at like 10 o'clock from the program director saying, okay, you're on tonight starting at 6. I was like, wow, okay, what happened? He said, the ratings came in. And I said, oh, I do okay, I guess. And he said, come down here. And I said, well, could you just tell me? And he goes, no, come down here. So okay, I got up and I got dressed and drove to the radio station and saw the rating book, and I saw why he wanted to move me to an evening shift and why he also wanted me to see it. I had an 85 share.
Whoa.
85 share between 5 and 6 a.m.
I'm surprised you didn't put you in morning drive.
Yeah, when I was in Bakersfield and I left and the book came out and my Sunday ratings were 49 share. I had a 49 share on
Oh,
Sunday.
goodness. Do you have any survey folders from those eras at Kern as well as KMen? Or were they not putting survey folders up at that time?
I was never on one.
Mm.
The first survey I was on was KYA in San Francisco.
Oh, okay. The boss of the Bay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, tell us about how you got to the Bay Area with KYA.
Well, I was always on the other station in town. There was always two stations, and I was on the number two. So I got fired a lot because the stations were always in upheaval or they would change formats, that type of thing. So they changed formats at KMen and let me go. And I'm at home and I'm sending out tapes and it's very depressing. But I finally get a job doing 6 to 10 at night on WDRQ in Detroit, which was a Bartell station, which at the time they were riding high with KCBQ and other Q stations. And the program director was a gentleman named John Lodge. And John hired me, and I did a break-in show in the middle of the night, and he comes and gets me to take me to breakfast, said, you sound great, it's fantastic, exactly what I want. So I go on at 6 o'clock, and I do my show, and I'm on for a couple of nights, and like I say, he's thrilled. But then I get the consultant, George Burns, who was consulting all of their stations at the time. He wanted me to scream, to just be more WDRQ. And I go, it's not what I do. And John said, well, you got to do this or I'll throw you on the all-night show. And I go, God, I don't want to do. And the all-night show there was 2 to 6.
Mm.
So I did it. No one will ever hear any of my WDRQ air checks. I was absolutely awful.
Mm.
But I was furiously sending out tapes. And I get a call from Bob Whitney at KYA in San Francisco. And he said, yeah, we'd like to hire you. It's a weekend gig. And I'm like, oh, Christ. I said, well, at the time, I was making $800 a month at WDRQ, working 6 nights a week. I said, God, I don't know if I could live in San Francisco on just, a pickup shift here and there. And he says, well, we're after union and our weekend shifts are $1,000.
Whoa.
It's $1,000, and it goes up to like 200, twice that, if you get a full-time gig, and or if you fill in full-time.
Mm.
So it's like I'm there. So that's how. When I left WDRQ, and I said to John Lodge, I'm leaving to go to KYA in San Francisco, and he goes, that's a stupid move. If you can last here for a year, you can go to WRKO in Boston. And I thought, what do I want to go to Boston when I go to San Francisco? So I left, and again, WDRQ was number 2 to CKLW. Then I went to San Francisco, where I was at KYA, which was number 2 to KFRC. Mm-hmm. And we had a really goofy format at KYA. It was fun, mm-hmm. but it was really goofy.
How was it goofy? Was it the music mix or the DJ patter, or what was
DJ mix? We had this afternoon guy, Jimmy Jett, who had all these weird airplane sounds and stuff, and we would have the top 5 at 45, where we would play a different high school's top 5, although they were basically the same records. And there was you couldn't talk over some of those. And then we would have these cable car clusters of oldies. And it was just weird. But I had a good time doing it. It was fun. And, we had board ops. It was the only time I've ever had like a board op. So it was fun. And I was in San Francisco, and I was on 10 o'clock at night to 2 o'clock in the morning. So I basically had the whole day and evening to myself in San Francisco. It was great fun. I loved being at KYA.
How often did you attend Giants games, or when they were playing the Dodgers, when you're up in San Francisco?
Oh, I attended a lot, because they would play like weekday games, and they were terrible in 1974. They had a great announcer. Al Michaels was their announcer. But I would wake up and hear that it's a Giant warm-up. I'm like, oh, okay. And I'd throw on clothes, and I'd get in my car, and I'd go over to Candlestick, and I'd buy a cheap ticket and walk in and just sit behind home plate. I was usually there in time for the first pitch. So I went to a lot of Giant games in those days.
Yeah, Candlestick Park, I finally went there back in 2012 to see a Niners game. My best friend has been going there since the mid-'90s, both for Dodger games, well, to Giants games as well as 49er games. And he talked about the Giant fans throwing batteries at him because he's wearing his Dodger blue. But then other times, he's in a photo with Giants fans smiling while the Giants fans are giving him the finger in the photo. And but when I went there, I thought, gosh, this place is the main road is just your average residential street, even narrower than that. I'm like, dang, how did people ever get in and out of this place?
Yeah, it was not easy. It was not easy. And it was fun when I became a broadcaster for the Padres to do games at Candlestick Park, where, again, I'm thinking, this is where Vince Scully sits when all those great Dodger games. But yeah, so I was at KYA for a while, and then they changed ownership and brought in new program director who pretty much cleaned house. And then I went to San Diego to KSEA, which was number 2 to KCBQ. And from there, I got hired at K100 in Los Angeles, which was number 2 to KHJ. And I got to do 6 to 10 at night at K100. And that was cool because I was hired by Bill Drake. And Morgan and Steele were on that station. So I got to follow the real Don Steele, who became good friends. We worked together at 2 different stations.
Wow.
So that was kind of cool.
We are in conversation with Emmy Award-winning writer, author, director, as well as podcaster, Ken Levine. And if you want to check out his podcast, go to kenlevine.blogspot.com. That's kenlevine.blogspot.com. And next time here on the Talking Archive, we'll find out more about K100. And was Bill Drake able to replicate the magic of 93 KHJ on the FM band in the early 1970s?